There we go. And I am going to share my slides. Put it on here. Share. Can you see it in presentation mode?
Launch meeting, okay.
Yeah, it says welcome with a nice spring picture.
Yep.
To make us feel, well, it's not quite out of winter yet, are we? I'm another month to go. So this
That's
is
a bit
for the
frosty.
recording. So today's session is for people who are skeptical a bit about investing in R&D, and I wanted to try and help with a couple of 3 easy steps and just thoughts and some information to impart, really. So what I like is the videos on, but mute, and then if you want to say anything, just interrupt. It's absolutely fine. Don't wait to raise a hand or anything else. And don't bother about the chat, just interrupt because it's sort of quite compact and bijou. And this is the LIFT program is what I've developed with Whatbox and have a tool, Lift Up. And it came about really for Learn, Investigate, Find, Transform to take my knowledge of engineering knowledge from over a couple of decades at Rolls-Royce and then the last 6 years being running the operations of the academic research network that they have, and what I found out and where I found the complexities were, and to try and demystify it really for other people. So I've put it into 2 parts. The first part is looking at the 3 steps that I've come up with, and then just talking some R&D questions and anything else that I can help you with. So the first one, I've also got a whiteboard that I've connected because I thought actually I'd get some audience participation and diversity of thought, see what people think that means. And I have got some answers down here of what I thought it meant, but to see what other people thought that it meant. So if I stop sharing that and then share the screen. Hi, Errol.
Hello.
And share this one. Can you now see a whiteboard, a blackboard, as it were? If I write something on it, can you see that?
Something's happening. It started screen sharing.
Has it? You should see a blackboard. I've just written hello on it.
Not seeing anything yet.
Oh.
Yeah.
Let's have another go. Stop sharing. Let's try again. I had this down really slick last time. Yep. Buy a cable. Connect on. Select trust. If not, we'll do this the old-fashioned way, and I'll just type it. No,
It was slick last time.
It was really slick. It's not liking it. I'll abandon that then, and we'll go back to the presentation. You can just shout out some ideas then. What do people think?
So diversity of thought, everyone agrees with me. Everyone comes round to my point of view, right?
I think you might find that's the definition of groupthink, actually.
That's Brian Clough management.
So it's not groupthink. Thank you, Errol. Any other thoughts?
Well, the word diversity is giving me some, the inclusion of all sorts of thoughts and ideas, I suppose.
Yeah. So one of the things I found interesting is when you've got a company who actually, so an engineering company, because I have engineering background and things, and you want them to be innovative, you've already got quite a down selective and a single way of thinking. And then you're trying to hit them over the head harder to be innovative, and actually need to open it up. And so working with the academics or mixing business and academia helps to break it up. So this is what
Is there not a risk in doing that to the business itself, because the products you're trying to make has to work and come out, and so you tend to fall on those who are more experienced in the production side. For example, I was at Rolls-Royce with you, and trying to get new ideas, across to production is a formidable task.
Yeah.
If I may interject, one of the problems, and I'm a small business operator, and I've always been an SME operator. I haven't worked for Rolls-Royce. I worked for Airbus and got fed up with that after 10 years and left, because everything was just too static and too against individual innovation. It was promoting things for the company, but if you had an idea, keep it to yourself unless you want the company to take it on. So I became an SME operator, and the problem with working with universities is the biggest issue, the two big issues. One is the universities get paid everything from the grant, whereas industry doesn't, and the other is the IP, which universities grab like a mice with nuts, and very often for an SME, which is kind of the weaker partner, the university will maximize its effect.
Yes. So I am now in a similar boat to you, having left a big corporation. I disagree on the IP. I have learned, so now since I'm on my own, and Errol is a business partner with me for another company that we run, Enjoy the Air, that the universities themselves have played exactly the same trick on me and Errol for an impact acceleration account award that we went for, and we'll try and take all the IP. Now I know that the stipulations on them of that money is not that they own the IP, and it's being savvy enough to know the system to say absolutely not. And actually we came back with a really pragmatic answer to the IP, and we've got out of it exactly what we need, and they have out of it what they need. But it is being wise to it, because you're right, from the sort of Gatorade bit of the States, they're being pushed more and more to grab everything, but then
What
they
does
don't.
Gatorade mean?
Oh, in the States, the Gatorade, the drink, I think one of the universities had they grabbed the IP from it, and they made millions. So they all think they're going to have a stake in a startup company,
Right,
and it's going to make millions.
yeah.
But there is also that element of,
Which is very often the way it works, and that's
Yeah.
that's another barrier to SMEs being successful in this country. That there are so many SMEs that come out of universities, with all of the support and all of the spin-off credentials from that university, regardless of where the university is, that any privately funded SMEs are automatically deprioritized from any research program because the universities are already there. Now, it may sound as if I'm a moaning Minnie, but there is an imbalance here, which privately funded SMEs, which I am and have always been, have a great deal of difficulty working with and working against universities, the research environment all over, because it's largely stitched up. It is a stitch up against, no, it feels like a stitch up from those who haven't got an involvement with universities or through the research cycle naturally.
I agree.
We're trying to break into
closed club. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And that the government itself, well, come on to it in a minute, is about the R&D investment actually, and where it is, and why partly this is a passion of mine, because I see that the same people are getting the same money, and that isn't going to get the government to achieve their research ambition.
Yes, so let me balance off that complaint, if you like. The universities walk away with a lot of money from these grants, which are driven by industry. Whether it's private SMEs, private big business, or whatever. We come up with the ideas. We prefer to have universities involved because they have a lot of resources. They have a lot of groupthink capability. They have a lot of cheap PhD and MSCs to throw at the problem. And then they have no match. They have no skin in the game because they are 100% funded, and they get a dibs on the IP. This is not good. Not good. And you said about skepticism of the research environment, and that's basically where it lies.
Well, I used to be a small SME too, and I developed software for monitoring health of rotating equipment, namely the performance, both gas turbines and compressors. And there were many. My problem was a one-man band. Nobody will really want to touch me because they see this as a risk. I had to work with bigger companies like Honeywell to get anywhere. In the end, we got through Honeywell. Then Honeywell wanted me to set up an offices and hire people, and they gave me some conditions, commercial terms which I couldn't agree to. I have to have an exclusive with them, and it becomes very difficult. So I saw the risk to me was too great. I could have made it work, but there's a problem. I'm a techie type of person. I'm not a businessman. So there is that problem. So in the end, I decided to work for Siemens and then for Rolls-Royce. It's interesting with Siemens, I sold them a license, a non-exclusive license. So I had tool sets which are worthwhile and can be used, right? But they won't come to one-man people. As somebody once told me, he said, Zach, nobody got fired for buying an IBM, no matter how crap it is.
So let me just, if I cover off this slide and then we'll move on to the next one, because I think it opens up what you're saying.
If I can, Kate, if I can just...
yeah, sure, Glenn.
A lifetime experience has only ever taught me what not to do. Knowing what to do is very, very difficult.
Yes. If you were going to do it again, you wouldn't do it the way you did it.
Correct. If you want to get there, don't start from here.
Yeah. Yes. So I want to pick up on a point that Zach said earlier, actually, and this needs inclusive leaders, because you could end up with people going off in different areas and things, and that the term diversity of thought is actually in the way that you think. So whether you're strategic, organized, interpersonal, analytical, and is your preference to it. And so it's harnessing that preference, but in a way to give you a higher rate of innovation. And I think sometimes in companies there's also the culture of the company, and each of the universities are like different personalities at a party and have different approaches to different things. And that is part of the qualitative way of finding the right collaboration. It isn't necessarily the quantitative measure of how far they are up the leader tables or anything else like that. It actually comes down to whether you could work with them. So if I touch on this co-investment, I'll put down here. So GERD is something that they refer to a lot, gross domestic expenditure on R&D. And they want to get from 1.7% GDP to 2.4%. And actually, you're right, Paul, actually, that a lot of the money, although there is 50-50 matching, it's actually more about sort of 70-30, 60-40 overall. They've skewed now where they're going to put it. So a lot of it's going into the net zero programs. The government are spending 15 million, but we've also gone back into the EU money, but in a different form than we were. Now we're an associate. So this is the businesses. So if you took an example of like Rolls-Royce or Siemens or someone, actually what they've been spending as big corporates is quite flatlined. They've just changed topics. And this one at the top is for UKRI. So there's various different grants and forms of funding, but actually look how peaky and trophy that is compared to the business one is just sort of gradually increasing, and they rely on this and they need this to increase. in which case there needs to be some other mechanism to unlock it. So it's not the same players, the same people attending the party, because they're just not going to achieve it. So this is from
Again,
the,
if I can just butt in there, Kate.
sure.
One of the biggest problems that that we find, and by we I mean probably the whole privately funded SME fraternity, is getting the connections into that money. It's a great headline. We're spending lots of money. The government wants all this net zero stuff. How do we get it? We've got the ideas, we've got the enthusiasm and the oomph to work on it and to partner with people. How do we learn about all these things, and where do we go to get a slice of that pie?
So the reason for the lift up tool I created, our freemium version is currently down, but it's such that you can find every single grant that is currently open, every single grant that has just been granted, and you can look at each university and see what is there. And then for slightly bigger companies, there's a site license to subscribe to it to get more insights into it, because even the UKRI don't actually know if they're duplicating any work and things. So you can start to look through using natural language programming, which topics have been funded, where they are at, what you could already pick up on, because there could be something that's already been funded that you might like to piggyback off of. And there are grants, if it's been funded by the Engineering Physical Sciences Research Council, you can have another grant that goes straight into the university that you can leverage that research that they've done. So sometimes,
but these are all targeted to projects that have already been identified. If we have a project that we want to run that fits well into the R&D framework, is there an opportunity for us to place that somewhere to get collaboration and partnerships moving on that particular project, or do we just simply have to take an open grant?
No. So one thing you could look at on the lift up tool is who is already working on that sort of area as potential collaboration. Then the National Centre for University and Business do like a dating agency. So you could put on their site Confer, Konfer, what you want to research in. Is anyone out there able to collaborate? I could help narrow down who the best opportunities, the best options for you would be. Then the other thing to do is to advocate to the research councils, because you'd come under, well, the Engineering Physical Sciences Research Council or Innovate, because as a business, I think you particularly look at Innovate under UKRI, but actually having a spread of funds, and some of them where the money doesn't flow through your company books. This was the bit that we struggled with previously, is how do you know how big your portfolio is if you're gaining knowledge and research when the money doesn't come through you? How do you understand that? Hence why this tool was born. So there could be PhD topics and things that are ongoing. You could have a student that's, depending on the IP arrangement, the government funds PhD students, and they have to leverage 10% of that award to work with businesses. So you could spell out what you want the topic to be over the IP and then discuss the IP arrangements and things. So it doesn't have to be an Innovate grant as such.
Yeah, until 12.
No problem.
Does that make sense, Paul, or answer your question?
I need to look at the tool more to find out the mechanics of it all. But it's
Yeah, we can discuss a
useful
follow
point,
up and
okay.
discuss a user case for it and to see how it can help. And I can show you the other one, the National Centre of University and Business as well. But you can see this is from the ONS data, that they also need to attract more overseas funding. And actually, some of the university money, if I looked at all the UKRI data, some of it goes out to other universities that people have partnered with in other countries. They're not all based here in the UK. So
It's definitely needed. It's too easy to just fall into a lottery type of thinking, right? When we see these grant submissions, like rounding it out and actually seeing, I won't say the totality, but getting the canvas and understanding, I think that's a really good navigation tool.
Yeah. And also it allows, like we've connected and you're in Brisbane in Australia. And so we can see what's going on in Australia and things and what we could link up with here. So actually you're not starting from ground zero here, if you see what I mean, to go into the universities. Yes. And you can see what other countries do. So you can see where we're going as ambition, but actually you're correct, Paul, in that the amount that comes from business that makes up that 1.7% that we currently have is the majority of it. But the same in all countries apart from Israel, which gets it from somewhere else. So I also thought I'd have a look. This is based on where companies' head offices are, because there's a fear that everything goes to the golden triangle, and with the agenda of levelling up of things where they are in the country. And this is the amount of R&D tax credits claimed by region. So again, mainly London and the Southeast. And so what I wanted to ask was, out of the R&D tax credits, because this is a way for you to unlock some of your money, as my third point, to give you the matching funding of what you could then invest in the grants. So as companies, do you tap into the R&D tax credit network?
So we've dealt with the R&D tax credits before, relatively successfully. Mm-hmm. It seems to be easily accessible. In fact, I have people ringing me every week to see if they can do my R&D tax returns. I have my R&D champion, so I have to politely reject their advances, but it seems to work pretty well, and we've been relatively successful in that regard.
I think there are many that do not have an R&D champion, and a lot rely on accountants. And
don't.
That is the answer. Exactly. You're very clued up in this. That yes.
No, I made that mistake.
Well, I asked my accountant last year, and they wanted more to do it than I would actually have got back.
I also have a very good accountant. He said, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I know somebody who does. Yeah. And he sent me off to someone, and I had a really good time with them. They took a flat fee. They said, we'll do it for 500 quid, which is great, because I then loaded them with all of my R&D stuff for the last 3 years. And I think they regretted making that offer. But this last time I got a company that would do it for 10% of the
overall claim. Yeah.
Which I'm more than happy with, and they did it very professionally. And anybody who wants a recommendation, let me know.
Yeah, so I partnered with a company to do it exactly for that reason, because my accountant couldn't, and also that they will write Innovate grants for a higher success rate. They're on an 85% success rate, I think, at the minute, because people have been at home during lockdown and spent more time writing grants, and it's getting very hard to win the money for it. But Andrew, you were chuckling then about the tax credits. Have you claimed any back, or?
No, we haven't. But we started off with a conversation with the accountant, which was a similar one that they don't know. So we're just well, I'm working with two companies, and one of them is just looking back through their last 3 years to say, well, what have we spent on R&D, and what should we be doing about it?
Yeah, I know enough to know that I can get some back, but not enough to know how much I'd get back. But it's things like in wages and pension contributions and not in directors' dividends, and also in investing in a product. But there are a lot of companies that don't know that they can get back R&D tax credits. And these specialist companies are well worth a conversation with, especially since if you're going to, some of the funds require 50% match funding. It's a way of keeping your R&D money working harder for you, because you can get it back and reinvest it. So I also thought I'd have a look, because a lot of you are sort of in the same sort of area of which sectors claimed the most back. And I think you're probably all coming in under sort of the manufacturing, because there's a lot of areas that don't claim it back. And I was trying to find an estimate of the government thinking of how much went unclaimed, how much is out there in the ether. Because an R&D tax specialist will tell you they'll get back about 50% or double actually what an accountant would find originally. And depending on what level you are, so a micro company, you just need to put in your accounts. Other people need, as you get bigger, you need to submit a report in with it. So shall we take some Q&A for it? We've got about 15 minutes left. If there's anything else that I can help with on those topics, or we can take it offline again later, and I'll help you. Paul will set something up to have a look.
So I've got a question. So I'm working in 3 sectors. In the automotive area, that's the company I mentioned that were just getting themselves into looking at doing a claim. We're about to start a fairly significant investment cycle. And one of the issues is, how long does it take to get your money back? Because the cash flow effect is something that's a limiting factor. And we're not starting because we don't know we can cash flow until grants and things come back. So how long does it take?
Money back for which? R&D tax credits, or for filling in a grant and getting the money?
Both, but I was thinking R&D tax credits.
Oh, so I have to say that my thing for R&D tax credits was less than 8 weeks, probably 6 weeks back to check in hand.
Right.
I don't know, Paul, what your...
No, that's about the same. We had it immediate, but it was a fairly low return this last claim. So they probably found that down the back of the sofa. If we're claiming back, thousands or tens of thousands, then it may take a bit longer. But I think the 4 to 6 to 8 weeks is about right.
Okay.
Yeah, depends whether they decide that they want to investigate you, I guess, and I guess that's a random selection.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that, but I've not heard of anybody doing that. There are claims that are rejected. Mm-hmm. It's not a fait accompli. You put in a claim and it's paid, which is another good reason for going through an R&D consultant who knows what they can get away with and what they can't. And I say what they can get away with because part of the reason that the accountants won't do it is because they're too bloody honest. They
play the conservative side.
Right,
of the fence.
Absolutely, exactly. Absolutely.
No, they play the HMRC side of the fence.
Well, they do that too. They're the HMRC police now.
Correct.
Whereas R&D consultants have a little more flexibility, a little more imagination, and it's not the shirt off their back if they get it wrong.
The cash flow bit, though, for the grants is something I'm definitely uncovered and can feel the pain of it personally. If you took an Innovate grant, say like a smart grant or something, from submitting it to finding out you'd won it and then getting cash yourself, I reckon on average is about 9 months.
Yeah, I would agree.
Say.
I would agree, 9 months.
And I think that really hurts, because during that 9 months, you cannot start doing that work yourself. Therefore, you've lost pace and competitive advantage. And if you find out maybe after 7 months you haven't got the money, then what do you do?
So the way we've done this in the past is you apply for grants, but then forget it. Forget you've done it. Don't consider them won to go with a cash flow. If you get it, it's a bonus, but just carry on regardless. Imagine you're not going to get it. And then you don't hold up, you know, and don't hesitate going for more than one grant. You can always give it back.
I'm going to have to leave now because
Okay,
I've got to go
that's
to
okay.
another meeting with the USA.
Thanks very much for joining, Glenn. It was lovely to hear from you.
But I will come back for another session.
Great. All right, we'll see you again.
Bye bye all.
Bye.
So I will say that we've just gone through a grant route with the UK Space Agency. It was for €430,000. And from the moment that I first contacted them to find out what the intervention rate was, it's taken 11 months.
Wow.
11 months.
And have you found out now?
Yes, we got the letter of approval yesterday.
Well done.
I mean, there is so much incompetence out there. It's unbelievable. And I'm pretty sure the Space Agency isn't the only agency that has it. I've got a running conflict with Innovate UK because of vested interests. And, you know, we've had grants rejected even though we got 80% of the assessment support. One assessor came out with a negative report and we lost the grant because of it. And it was obvious that that assessor was in the field of expertise that we were operating in.
And you're a conflict of interest.
Which isn't supposed to happen. I'm also not supposed to tell you I'm an Innovate assessor as well, and I know the rules.
Yeah, I'll cut off the Q&A from the
Oh, right. It doesn't matter.
from the recording.
But that's what we're fighting against. And I find it
It's a
disheartening more than
self-fulfilling
anything else.
prophecy, the self-fulfilling circle, the grant system. There is nothing to say.
And the open
We need to do
grants, forget it. It's an awful lot of heartbleed for nothing.
You are better off going for a targeted grant. You can go to somebody who would write one for you.
The writing doesn't matter. In an open field, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't affect your chances of getting through. You know, I can write grant applications as well as the next guy, and have done. But in an open call, especially for something as niche as space, they just don't get it. With automotive, aerospace, you know, you might stand a better chance if it's disruptive or very innovative, because both of those are fields that people get. In space, you know, you can come up with a new all singing, all dancing, demisable widget, and it goes to Innovate UK, and they go, and you're lost. You know, you've fallen at the first hurdle. So there you go. I guess the lesson is don't go into a niche technology. Do stuff that people know and understand.
Yes, it's being able to convey it, isn't it, in a simple way? And sometimes a lot of them are very hard.
We can convey as much as we like, but if the assessors don't get it, they don't get it. They don't do any groundwork on it.
Do you do any advocating to the agencies? Would they know who you were and who your company were?
Absolutely. And that's probably why they avoid us, because we we caused so much trouble for them in the past.
And do you have, if you imagine your utopia of your R&D strategy, do you, as a jigsaw, have you looked at the funding elements of it with building up of different types of funds? Because I think a lot of people go for, as you said, your advice to Andrew, don't pin your hopes on one grant. That's what they do. That, you know, this is their utopia. It all hangs on winning this one grant. So it needs to be
Zach will understand this more than anybody. A single person SME, small micro SME, we just don't have people that we can put 24/7 on grants.
Right.
You know, I do it all in this case. So I do the grants, I do the interface with customers, I do the interface with agencies, I do the everything, you know. We just don't have the department that Airbus has to send off. Oh, just go and write a few grants, that'll do, and you get your pension and all that. So the pressure is more on us, on the micros and single person SMEs, than ever before. Now, where an SME is connected to a university, which is what we were talking about half an hour ago, they can use university departments to do it. They can use resources that are not necessarily part of their structure. We don't have that luxury. So what I said about getting as many grants in as you can does have a limit when you're a single person or micro SME.
Yes. Yeah, the one pair of hands.
One brain.
Yes.
There were people who approached me for a fee to do all this for me.
Oh yeah, of course.
And I said, I don't know about that. I wasn't too sure.
Well, it's fine if they take the fee on success only.
No, they don't do that. You see,
No,
they take
they
it up front.
I think they do both. Yeah.
You can find them,
Huh?
but they will only do it twice or three times. If you're, you know, we got 3 rejections from Innovate UK, and we lost the consultant purely because he was doing grants for nothing.
Have no fear, I will not be approaching you to do that, sir, to offer that service. Getting caught writing anything down is not high on my list, and I'm not an eloquent writer, so no. But Errol and I ourselves have had to write some grant things, and we've had one back recently. We didn't get, did we, Errol, earlier this week? And
No,
it is
and look,
frustrating.
well, I think the you know, to be told it's a 53% pass, right? And the momentum, right? It does take energy away from probably more important sales activity in a business. And I think right at the beginning of the call, someone mentioned, I think it might have been you, Zach, you know, that product, that continual DNA, focusing on a product, moving it, you know, creating something distinctive, unique, all that can be wasted in a funding application, right? So yeah, I'm probably more cagey than I should be, Kate, and here you are encouraging us to be courageous. But I think the information's the difference. Yeah.
And actually, the best one that we had leverage on was scouring to see what EPSRC had funded, and the link can be very tenuous. And we've had a research associate for 6 months working with us, and we've leveraged off a £20 million grant, and the money flows into the university, and the university pay the research associate. It's only £10,000, but the value we've had from it and the knowledge we've had in part from the university has just been phenomenal. And the partnership, and therefore your name getting known, actually, that to us, I think, has been a far better use of our time and investment, and commercialization of it, in the fact that we now promote the university and what's happened with them has been better than spent than us applying for these other grants, which have been for more money.
And assisted, Kate, without taking anything away from what you've said, assisted by the fact, you know, the Vice Chancellor's EA as well.
Yeah, well, so I knew where to go, but I still started from looking through what had been funded around a topic that we were interested. And I have a lot of contacts at universities from my role at Rolls-Royce, so I knew how to approach them afterwards. But that first search was still doing exactly what I would suggest to you, is to look at where the money has gone already.
To be fair, 53% pass is an expected rejection.
Yeah, well, it was for a local grant. It wasn't
we had
Innovate.
84%.
Yeah,
84%.
yeah,
and it was rejected.
Yeah, I'm not. I have no illusions. I know we're good, but some people are better. I've yet to meet them. But Kate, just another question here, a bit of a circuit breaker. Who dictates the big key themes for R&D? Like, you get politicians tripping over, or does it happen quite independently of the political and policy process?
So there comes out, there is a top level innovation strategy that comes out for the country, and then from that gets disseminated down, and UKRI have one, and then from that comes down to each of the research councils. So Innovate have one, EPSRC have one, MRC have one, and they all do their highs and lows of various topics. So I was going to do another session on what are sort of the top topics at the minute because some of the items are classed as declining. So no matter how much you feel that you are innovative in that area, I think you'd never get your head above the parapet on it.
That's what did you call that? An innovation?
It's the innovation
It's like a wish
strategy.
list, right?
Yeah.
It's like a wish list. This is something that we've been banging onto the space agency for years. You know, very often in answer to the question, it's industry who drives it. You know, it seems to be that you come up with a great idea and it goes into a bucket, and then somebody picks it out as a priority R&D subject.
Yes.
But I suspect that there is something else going on from the top down, and there must be a wish list, but nobody ever gets it.
There's a lot of advocating done by the big companies. So an example is, I know the points of contact at the various research councils and who to ring up if I say, you know, we're thinking about doing this, or there's a lot of back of the fag packet, we could put this in, we could do this, but think of the best thing to do is to think of the metrics. So how you are measured and how the universities are measured and how they are measured are not aligned. So having to put on your hat of all these different sectors to find that sweet spot is absolutely key to it.
That's a really useful link, Kate. Thank you very much indeed.
Oh, you're welcome. And just for Zach and Andrew and Errol, is I've put in there the innovation strategy. And then if you go into UKRI, then they have one. I can find theirs for you quickly. They have one that they disseminate out as well.
Is that different?
Because so the research councils are looking for best science, not best commercial science, because I've argued with them about that, but best science, hence why they do peer reviews and things of academics, and it's very academic. Innovate are looking for, and like the Aerospace Technology Institute would be looking at economic benefits to the country, and so they each look at it and come up with their strategy based on their metrics and their lens into the world. And so UKRI do theirs over
I'll have a read through that
5 years.
once we're offline. I'll
Yeah,
do that.
so there's
Thank
the
you.
UKRI corporate plan, and then underneath it will be the delivery plans for each of the research councils as well.
How do they evaluate the items or topics that are going to be less favored? How do they do that?
How do they get on with the
Yeah.
items that are less favoured?
Yes, you know, that's
Some
what
of
is
it
the
is,
criteria they apply. You know, I mean, for example, I mean, as you suggested, you thought I was from fuels, although I do work in fuels. Biofuels have been looked at for over a decade now or more. I don't think you'll get much funding for any new work on biofuels compared to hydrogen or something like that. I don't know.
Can I ask you, Zach, just as a sideline, what biofuels you're looking at?
This is second and third generation
Are you looking for biomass?
not e-fuels.
Oh, okay, biomass. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not looking for biomethane or biokerosene or any of these.
It could come from biomass.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our rocket propulsion is based on methane liquid oxygen.
That's a good one. Better than hydrogen.
And we want to get away from fossil methane, of course,
Okay.
or from frac methane.
Yeah.
So we over the next few years we want to develop biomethane, a good biomethane process. First of all, to get hold of the methane, and secondly, to cryogenic it, to cryo it, to chill it, whatever the verb is, so that we can use it in the rockets. And that's a bit of a gap in our net zero growth.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of stuff on renewable natural gas.
Yeah.
See, so it's just not methane, but you can filter that out. So there's quite a lot of that coming on stream now.
But it's all ambient, right? It's all
Yes, all gaseous.
okay.
It's all gaseous. It's
Yeah.
pipeline type.
Yeah.
So once you got that, you could apply the LNG technologies that we use today, to produce the liquid natural gas with the high concentration of methane as you want.
I like the way you make it sound as if you're pouring a bowl of cornflakes, and I think I'd like to discuss that with you a bit more if you're available.
Yeah,
for
sure.
that.
Yeah. You on LinkedIn, we can always meet up that way. Or
I could share your details if you two are
Okay,
happy.
please do. Right, thank you.
Yeah, that'd be useful. Thank you.
What I would
Interesting, I got
suggest,
some ideas, sorry to digress slightly, I got some interesting ideas on launching stuff too, which we may want to talk about. Sorry,
Well,
Pete.
let's hope it's in the research and innovation wish list. Otherwise, we won't get off base one, will we?
Well, I
At the
think
time.
it's channeling your inner sort of spin doctor of it. It's changing it's not changing the essence of what it is you need to research. It's changing the way that it's communicated so that it fits in with their current mantra and their bingo chart.
What we need, if you don't mind me saying so,
Mhm.
is more expertise in government.
Agreed.
Stop relying on Oxford University chuckouts
I agree with that
and get a few
entirely.
technologists in there.
If I may
Yes.
say, Kate, I know you did mention a lot about universities. I went to Cranfield Institute of Technology that many years ago. And the culture we had there is very different to Cranfield University. You see, we did real practical research, dry low emission combustion. How do you increase polytropic efficiency from 80 to 85 to 90%? We had to build rigs, we had to testing the Rolls-Royce and exhaust European gas turbines, there, British Gas, they were our sponsors with government money. For example, my PhD involves setting a model. That is not sufficient. I had to go to validate it by building a rig. Then I have to go to this consortium and ask them for a problem that they have for me to solve that. Right? So that is the level of practicality and the kind of people I worked with. Because they came from industry. They were called research officers. They were on contracts for 5 to 10 years. On a program, they will be funded. So the game we play today in universities, I don't want to mention Cranfield particularly, is very different. And they were very angry with us, the universities, because the way Cranfield Institute of Technology did things, they were making money. And lots of it.
And it comes all the way back to the relationship that that my companies have with universities. That, I mean, you won't mention Cranfield, but I do. They are the biggest predators on the university market.
But Cranfield University, not Institute of Technology.
No, that's right.
Cranfield University, remember, is the only postgraduate university in the country, so they have no money that comes into them for undergraduate fees. So
their business case is a bit wrong.
Yes, they operate as a different culture and personality to the others. Yes. Do any of you have any work ongoing at universities at the minute?
No.
No, can't get the grant.
Okay, so
I say we can't get
realism that they do. I mean, I've seen certain universities talk about hydrogen passionately as if though that is going to be the next thing. And we keep telling them, well, here in LinkedIn, you probably would have seen quite of my conversations, trying to highlight to them, look, there are lots of issues with this. They don't pay attention to that, and they will not answer the concerns. But they keep banging on this, and the people on the conversation seem of the view, well, they just want to get grants, to do something and earn a living.
But that makes you wonder if they're not being driven by some higher force to say, develop the hydrogen economy or else.
It's probably they're influencing it too at the same time. They plant the seeds into politicians, as you said, you see, and then they come back and say, oh, I got something to shout about.
No, it's because they get measured. See, Errol, they get measured on how much research money they come in and how much publication they make. They write. They are their metrics.
So they're not trying to solve a problem.
No, not necessarily. That's what I mean. You have to change the mindset and almost put their shoes on, as it were, to see what would interest them and why.
Well, as a taxpayer, right? And I just said, why should I have to do that? I mean, why don't you listen to reason? And LinkedIn is a very good forum for that. It is a very good, it's an excellent forum. Because all the serious players are there. I mean, I've taken on CEO at BP, I've taken CEO at Wärtsilä, even Rolls-Royce, who has to work for, all right? So I don't have any particular, I just try to focus on the issues. I try to, because we have one environment, that's all we have. And my argument has always been is, we want to do it at the lowest life cycle cost. That means using the current hydrocarbon infrastructure.
I'm just going to go for a second. There's somebody at the door.
Okay.
Okay, right. So you see, that's the kind of thing I have been trying to focus on. Get a pack. See, if I can produce, biofuels have their problems, so will hydrogen. All these new things will have problems. All new innovations, They never work first time. It'll be a miracle if it did. I mean, we know about the RB211 very well, right? And that became the backbone of Rolls-Royce in the end. You see, so I take the point. When I was at Rolls-Royce, I mean, I filed some 30 patents. Obviously, some 10 have been so far being granted, I understand. But none of them ever went into production. Well, I can understand the concern Rolls-Royce has. They know it's a big risk. Who's going to underwrite our failures? In the government? No. You're on your own.
But sometimes a patent isn't necessarily because you want to make that stuff. It's because you want to block somebody else from doing it.
I have a moral problem with that. Because if there is something innovative and can be useful, I would even go as far as saying, why don't we get GE and Rolls-Royce to fund things like that and say, hey, look, we'll come up with this new engine and let's spread the risk.
But the cost of putting, if you put all the patents together, you could end up with something that didn't work.
Well, this is the thing, you see, we need to fund it in a manner. So my approach to all the patents I did has been very similar to my approach to the environment changes that we're seeing. You know, how can I take the current technology and alter it a little bit to give you the maximum benefit?
So maximum benefit, you'd have to define benefit, because a maximum benefit to Rolls and that would be keep the shareholders happy.
Well, that is partly the problem.
See, it's a different metric again. So it's
Yes.
a different metric to the government metric.
Yes.
You're thinking at this completely logically through a sensible lens, but there are multiple lenses to this.
Right. So, the thing is, when I try to go to the other lenses and say, well, here are the issues I see, they don't come back to you and say, well, Zach, no, you're wrong for these reasons. You see, or nor do they try to say, okay, this looks interesting thing, let's see what we can go next. That doesn't happen. As you rightly say, that's a diversity thing that we started off with.
Yeah.
Indeed, right? So we have to have this. People are, we all are guilty of it when it comes to diversity, because we got our pet hates and pet likes. We sometimes have to take that hat off and say, what's this other guy trying to really tell me? Obviously, I don't understand it. How do I interact with that person? Paul and I, we got talking. I've never met Paul before, but we built a rapport on something that was common. Renewable fuels. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
There are people doing things like battery, okay, power things, and they're all nice to do as a hobby and things like that, And I had, I think it was, I don't know who, DHL had an article on the web about how they're going to have battery powered and go green. The problem with battery power is not green, it produces a significant amount of CO2 in the manufacture of batteries. You see, so.
See, now you're on the political spin of
yes.
green or
well,
not.
not really. I was still telling them, if I take biofuels and put it into your aircraft, the amount of changes have to make to do that is so minimal. Right?
Yeah.
Any increase in cost.
I think you're preaching to the converted, and I have to
Indeed.
say, we have
But
overrun.
to be
and
fair, to be fair, Zach, the airline industry and the marine industry, I think are taking big steps forward. With sustainable
Indeed.
aviation fuels
Yes.
and all of this. Now,
Correct.
I'm not a fuel guy. I don't know where this stuff comes from, but it obviously has to come from somewhere. And one of the things they were playing about with in the past was breaking maize down to make sustainable aviation fuel. That seems to me to be a bit of a nonsense.
Yes, you're right. That's first generation fuel.
Because it's not really sustainable.
Yeah, yes.
It's
Correct.
like the rubbish we went through in the 80s and 90s with the
That's right.
with the palm forests, the
Correct. Also,
palm oil. It's
sugar
suddenly this
palms.
green oil
Yeah.
that we can
Yeah.
use, and you
that is
find out that
nonsense.
you're
right.
destroying forests and orangutans.
You're
for it.
absolutely right. You're correct. So the second generation is the kind of stuff, for example, if you get large, vast land for agriculture, you've got to crop rotate. You can't do it every time.
Yeah.
And the second rotation, you can put things like, other kinds of, you don't grow, we just let it go wild. And there are crops you can grow in that second rotation, which is not food. which
The
you
most
can't grow.
infuriating thing is this seems like the original medieval farming system. We used to rotate all the time.
I am
You know,
going to
you
draw
have-
this to a close. We're going to end up having another episode of Grumpy Old People next Tuesday at 11:30.
Honestly, Kate, it's not grumpy old people. It's people like us who have seen the future,
Oh yeah,
and we have to try and we get grumpy because nobody bloody listens.
Oh, the company that Errol and I have is called Enjoy the Air, and it's all about air pollution and things. And the fact that people say that electric vehicles are the answer is really, I'm on your bugbear of fuel and stuff as well. Believe me.
But we shouldn't take this away. I mean, there has to be a sustainable future.
Yeah.
If the talk of electric vehicles and PHEVs and I don't know, even going back to the sulfur-free diesel, if these are interim ways to get a step forward to reach a sustainable future, then, you know,
Yeah.
fair play to them. But what we
Yeah.
must
Yes.
avoid,
That's the way forward.
Is them being marketed as the silver bullet.
yes,
Well, that is the thing.
Yeah.
or being marketed as something positive when they're really a step backwards.
Yeah.
And I think broadly speaking, the greenwashing is somehow doing that as well. You know, all this talk. I mean, the talk about Greta from Greta is great. It focuses the mind. She's an annoying little mosquito, but she probably focuses the mind a little bit of the politicians. But she has to be careful that she doesn't. Is there a word? Ingravitate or push people away rather than bringing them in, you know?
Yeah, putting people off. And
Yes, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to end this with the last thing I'm going to put in the chat that I think you'd like to watch from COP26. It's an alter ego of a comedian who's created this character, Jonathan Pye, and about COP26 and the messaging of what the governments and that have come up with and what people are hearing. And with that, I will say thank you very much.
Kate, tell me about your just before you go.
Mhm.
Tell me about your recurring things. Are they all the same? Well, you
What,
said
every
you would
week?
yeah.
No. I've got a cycle of 13 of them.
Right. Do we have to turn up to each one, or is there an agenda for each one that we can read? Or I mean, I'd love to drop in, but honestly, I'm a busy guy. I run a
that's okay.
small business on my own.
I will put up a list of the topics. I'll
Yes,
send
that
you
would be
a list
great.
of what next week's topic will be.
Yeah.
I've got a list here. I just haven't picked which one it is yet. Because I was going to see what people thought from today and whether there's something that out of this that came out. Is there something in particular you'd like to hear about?
Well, no, but you mentioned doing the Innovate wish list before, you know, the subjects and the.
Oh yeah, I've got down there. Yeah, what's hot topics and what's not.
Yeah. So I'd like to sit in on that.
Okay.
And if I've taken anything, you know, in what is it, an hour and a half, I've met Zach, I've met Andrew, I've met you. You've sent me 2 fabulous websites to take a slip through.
Yeah.
I've got the space
Yeah.
story out.
And I'll send you I'll curtail this recording and I'll send you a copy of it. And I suggest actually you think of a user case of something and we can help navigate some stuff for you.
I'll have a think about what that means.
It means think about what it is particularly you want as research topics and things. What is it? What's the problem you're trying to solve? And then we can have a look. Yeah, but that's the macro problem. But to get that macro problem, you have lots of micro problems.
Yes. One of them I've spoken to Zach about is this getting the methane production more sustainable. But I mean, while we're on that subject, there are processes that have been devised of late in the last 5 years that draw carbon dioxide from the air, split out the oxygen and use the carbon either for composites, turning into solid nanotubes, carbon nanotubes, or biomethane. Now those processes are brand new. They're being devised and commercialized as we speak. But I would like to roll those out for this because Black Arrow, it's a bit of a weird strapline, really. We want to be a net zero space launch provider, the first in the world to be a net zero space launch provider. But net zero isn't really a space problem. Isn't really a space flight problem. Our problem is pollution. We put soot particles and alumina into the upper atmosphere.
Right, I can hear you.
That's her doorbell.
Yeah.
That's the same postman, Kate.
Yeah, I got the guard dog on it and the husband. So
Yeah, so net zero isn't really a problem for the space flight industry, but if Musk has his way, it will be.
mm,
You know, if he wants to start launching once a week and the Chinese do the same thing, and then we're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice to nip that problem in the bud rather than wait till it happens.
there's something as well from SMRs. As the small modular reactors, one of the outputs of it, you can get some sustainable fuel. Stop it.
I think that's a bit off though, isn't it? It's 10 years down the road.
A little. There's some work going on at St Andrews in Aberdeen.
But Rolls-Royce are right behind it, aren't they? They're
Well, SMRs are theirs. Yes.
yes, that's right. But they haven't rolled them out yet.
No. Sorry. This much noise from this little thing. Right. On that note, I will say goodbye.
All right, thank you very much. Kate.
Thanks
very
very
much.
much. Nice to meet you guys.
all.
Cheers.
Yeah,
Okay,
bye now.
then touch base later on. Bye-bye.
Yeah, indeed. Bye.